now discuss the Republic Act Number 11057 entitled An Act Strengthening the Sector Transaction Legal Framework in the Philippines, which shall provide for the creation, perfection, determination of further establishment of the centralized notice registry, and enforcement of security interests in personal property and for other purposes. In Section 1, it states that the law shall be known as the Personal Property Securities Act. This simply gives the official name of the law, which will be used in referring to its legal documents, discussions, and applications. On the other hand, in Section 2, the Declaration of Policy. It explains that the purpose of the law is it explains the purpose of the law. It aims to help improve the economy by making it easier, especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises, or the MSMEs, to access the credit at a lower cost. This is done by creating a modern and unified legal system where people can use personal property like equipment, inventory, or other accounts receivable as collateral for their loans.
I'll be introducing the Chapter 1 of this said Act, which includes the definition of terms and the scope of this said acts. First, in the definition of terms, we have commodity contract, wherein it only counts legally if it's bought or sold in a registered market, or even if it was bought in another country, it should be registered also by the said country, and there must be a intermediary that keeps the records of the said goods. This control agreement is a written paper that telling a company that they must obey or follow the rules or follow the orders of the lenders, grantor, which they are the one that giving their property as guaranteed for their debt. Intermediary securities, these are securities or investment not recorded in a formal way. We have notice. Notice in a official statement filed in public registry to announce, change, or ends lender's rights over someone's property. Proceeds. Proceeds is anything of value you get from the collateral. Now, we're at the last section of this chapter. Section 4, the scope of the Act. This Act should apply to all transactions in any form that secured an obligations with movable collateral except interest in aircraft subject to Republic Act Number 94697 or the Civil Aviation Authority Act of 2008 and interest in ships subject to Presidential Decree Number 1521 or the Ship Mortgage Decree of 1978.
Now let us go to the chapter 2 titled Creation of a Security Interest. In this chapter, we will discuss sections 5 to 10. To start with section 5, it explains the creation of a security interest. A security interest is said to be created through a security agreement. This agreement may also cover future property that the guarantor may acquire later on. However, this security interest only becomes effective once the guarantor already has a right over that property. Section 6 discusses the requirements for a security agreement. The law requires that the agreement must be in writing and signed by the parties. It may be written in English or Filipino, whichever the guarantor prefer. And to make transactions easier and understandable, the Department of Finance is tasked to prepare model agreements written in plain language. Section 7 is mainly focused on the description of a collateral. The law allows collateral to be described either specifically or in general terms. Broad descriptions such as all inventory or all personal property are still considered valid as long as the assets can reasonably be identified. Moving on to Section 8. This section explains the rights to proceeds. A security interest does not only apply to its original collateral, but also to its proceeds. For example, if pledged inventory is sold, the creditor's security interest may extend to the cash or to the receivables obtained from that sale, even if the proceeds are mixed with other funds or commingled, the law still protects the creditors up to traceable amount. This ensures that the value of the collateral remains protected even if its forms changes. Section 9 discusses the continuity of a security interest. A security interest continues even if the collateral is sold, leased, exchanged, or otherwise transferred, unless the law or the agreements provides otherwise. This protects the creditor's rights despite changes involving the collateral. On the last section of chapter 2, which is section 10, it talks about the contractual limitation. The law declares void any agreements that prevents a guarantor in creating a security interest. This is important in transactions involving goods, services, constructions, intellectual property, and real property because it allows businesses to use receivables as collateral in obtaining credits and financing. So, to simply conclude, Chapter 2 or the sections in Chapter 2 of the Republic Act number 11057 explains how security interests are created, documented, protected by law, as well as how they continue and apply to proceeds and receivables.
So today, I will be discussing the Chapter 3 of Republic Act 11057 of the Philippine Revised Code, the perfection of security interest. Section 11, perfection of security interest, explains that a security interest becomes perfected when it has already been created and secured creditor performs one of the required actions under the law. So once perfected, the security interest becomes effective against third parties, meaning other people must respect the right over the collateral. In the section 12, the means of perfection, it provides the ways to perfect a security interest. A creditor must take one of these steps to protect their rights legally, which includes registering a notice in the registry, taking possession of the collateral, and having control over certain types of property like deposit accounts or investment property. And in section 13, which is the perfection by control, it explains how perfection works in control, especially for deposit accounts and investment property. A creditor can gain control by being the bank or intermediary itself, entering into a control agreement and having a security interest recorded in official records. However, banks or intermediaries are not required to enter into such agreements if they do not want to. In Section 40, perfection in proceeds, it states that when collateral is sold or disposed of, the security interest automatically continues in its proceeds like money or receivables. If the proceeds are in certain forms like cash or accounts receivable, the security interest stays perfected automatically. Otherwise, the creditor must perfect it again within 15 days or it will not be effective against third parties. Section 14, the perfection in proceeds. In Section 14, it states that when collateral is sold or disposed of, the security interest automatically continues in proceeds like money or receivables. If the proceeds are in certain forms like cash or accounts receivable, the security interest stays perfected automatically. Otherwise, the creditor must perfect it again with 15 days or it will not be effective against third party. In Section 15, change in means of perfection. It provides that a security interest remains perfected even if the method of perfection changes. For example, from possession to registration, as long as there is no doubt where the security interest was unperfected. Section 16, assignment of security interest, it allows a secured creditor to transfer their security interest to another person. When this happens, an amendment notice may be registered to reflect the new secured creditor. This ensures
Chapter 4, Priority of Security Interest. This chapter explains who has the better right or first claim over a collateral when there are multiple creditors involved. So now, let's discuss each section one by one. Section 17, Priority Rules. Section 17 explains the general rule on priority. The law says that the creditor who first registers or perfects the security interest will have priority over others. Even if another creditor makes the agreement earlier, so in simple terms, what matters is not who came first in making the contract, but who first completed the legal requirements for perfection or registration. Like for example, creditor A and creditor B both use the same vehicle as collateral. Even if creditor A made the agreement first, if creditor B registered the notice earlier, then creditor B will have priority. So, this rule encourages creditors to immediately register or perfect their security interest to protect their rights. Section 18, Priority for Perfection by Control. Section 18 explains that creditors with control over deposit accounts, investment property, or security have priority over those who only register and notice. The bank maintains the account automatically as priority and may use the right of set-off to collect unpaid debts. If multiple creditors have control agreement, the first agreement made gets priority. For securities, possession or official control provides the stronger protection than simple registration because the actual control gives the greater security and reliability. Section 19, Priority for Instrument and Negotiable Documents. Section 19 explains that possession is stronger than registration when dealing with instrument or negotiable documents. If a creditor physically possesses the document, such as promissory note, the creditor has priority over someone who only registered notice. Like for example, if two creditors claim the same negotiable document, the one holding the actual document will generally have the superior right. Section 20, Priority and Right of Retention by Operation Law. This section protects persons who provide services or materials and keep possession of the goods until payment is made. A common example is a mechanic repairing a car. If the owner does not pay, the mechanic may keep the car until payment is completed. The mechanic claim can even have priority over an earlier perfected security interest. This rule protects workers and service providers who improve or preserve the property. Section 21, Transferee Exception. Section 21 protects buyers who acquire movable property in good faith during the ordinary business transaction. If the buyer did not know about the security interest, the buyer may receive the property free from that security interest. However, if the security interest was already registered before the purchase, the buyer is not considered in good faith. This rule promotes fairness and protects ordinary buyers in commercial transactions. Section 22, Effect of Insolvency. Section 22 explains what happens when the debtor becomes insolvent or bankrupt. If the security interest was already perfected before insolvency proceeding started, the security interest remains valid and keeps its priority. So in short, bankrupt does not automatically remove the rights of the perfected secured creditor. This provides stability and protected for creditors. Section 23, Purchase Money Security Interest or PMSI. A purchase money security interest gives a creditor special super priority over other creditors when the creditor finances the purchase of specific property such as equipment inventory, consumer's good, intellectual property, or lifestyle. So meaning, the creditor who have acquired the property will have stronger rights to the collateral compared to conflicting security interests. However, this priority is only valid if the creditor follow the legal requirements, such as register with, within the required period, property perfecting the security interest and giving notice when necessary. Section 24 gives special protection to creditors who provide money or food or medicine for livestock. If the creditor perfects the security interest and gives notice to existing creditors, that creditors may gain priority over others. The purpose is to protect the health and preservation of the livestock. And lastly, Section 25. Section 25 explains that a security interest continues even if the movable property becomes attached to another property, improved, or mixed with other goods. This applies as long as the property can still be reasonably identified and traced. The Civil Code rules on ownership will also apply in determining ownership rights. To conclusion, Chapter 4 explains the rules on determining priority among creditors with security interests over the same collateral. The law generally favors creditors who first perfect or register their security interests, those with control or possession, and creditors who directly finances the purchase of the property. These rules help maintain fairness, order, and security in commercial transactions.
Now, let's tackle Chapter 5. So, Chapter 5 is about registration and registry. So, the first section here is Section 26, Establish of Electronic Registry. The registry is an electronic platform established and administered by the Land Registration Authority, or they call LRA, to facilitate the registration and searching of notices. For example, a lending institution can use this digital portal to officially record its claim on a borrowing inventory. Section 27. A public record. All information in a registered notice is a public record, allowing any person to search the registry, with this electronic record serving as the official legal evidence. An example would be a car buyer searching the registry to ensure the vehicle is not already being used as collateral for another person's debt. Section 28. Sufficiency of notice. An initial notice is valid if it identifies the grantor by an identification number, names the secured creditor, provides their address, describe the collateral, and includes the fee. For instance, a notice might describe the collateral broadly as all personal property of the grantor, which is illegally sufficiency under the Section 29. One notice for multiple agreements. A single registered notice can relate to security interests created under one or more security agreements between the same parties. For example, if a farmer has three separate loan agreements with the same bank for a different equipment, the bank only needs to file for one notice. Section 30. Effectiveness of notice. A legal notice about loan or security interest become active, how long it stays valid, and what errors might make it legally useless. This section ensures that lenders and borrowers have clear rules on the legal effectiveness and public visibility of the registered claims. Section 31. Seriously misleading notice. A notice is considered seriously misleading and ineffective if it fails to provide the correct identification number of the grantor. An example of ineffective notice would be one where the grantor's ID number is mistyped, preventing it from appearing in a search. Section 32. Amendment of notice. A notice can be amended by providing the initial registration number and new information. To adding collateral or guarantors requires written authorization from the affected parties. For example, if a borrower adds a new tractor to a loan, the lender must file an amendment notice authorized by the borrower. Section 33. Continuation of notice. To extend the validity of a notice, a continuation must be registered within 6 months before the original term expires. If a 5-year loan is extended, the lender must file this amendment in the final months of the original term to maintain its priority. Section 34. Termination of notice. The effectiveness of a notice ends when a termination notice is registered by authorized secured creditors. For instance, once a car loan is fully paid off, the bank registers a termination notice to clear the borrower's public record. Section 35. Registry of notice. The registry duties are administrative. It assigns unit numbers, maintains records for public inspections, and provides certified search reports. Section 36. Search and registry records and certificate reports. A bank might request a certificate reports to use as sufficient evidence in court to provide they have the highest ranking claim on a piece of machinery. Section 37. Disclosure of information. Secured creditors must provide borrowers upon request with the unpaid loan balance and a list of collateral, typically offering one free update every 6 months. For example, a small business owner can request a statement of their remaining balance to plan their finances. Section 38. Fee set by regulation. The Department of Finance sets registration fees to cover costs through electronic searches, and termination notice are free. This ensures that checking if property is encumbered remains accessible to the general public without financial barriers. Section 39. When the grantor may demand amendment or termination of notice. A borrower can demand that a lender amend or terminate a notice if the debt is paid or if the notice incorrectly includes property. If the lender fails to comply within 15 working days, the borrower can seek a court order to force the update. An example is a borrower suing a court order termination after a lender ignores a demand for a clear record. Section 40. Matters that may be required to demand. When a borrower, grantor, sends a formal request to a lender to update or end the notice, the lender must take action within 15 working days. Depending on the situation, the lender must either completely end the registration or change it to show that the certain property is no longer being used as security. Section 41. Produce for non-compliance with demand. If a lender does not update or delete the notice within the required 15 working days, the borrower has the right to take the matter to court. The borrower can ask a judge to issue an official order that forces the registry to make the requested changes. Section 42. Compulsory amendment or termination by court order. The court has the authority to issue a final order to change or end a notice. If a lender fails to do so, once this order is issued, it is binding on the land registration authority, meaning the registry must carry out the court instructions as quickly as possible, while the lender has the right to appeal the court decision if they disagree. The registry still must follow the initial court order while the process continues. Section 43. No fee for compliance of demand. A lender is strictly prohibited from charging the borrower any fees for complying with a demand to update or terminate a notice. Section 44. When registration and search continues, interference with privacy of individual. Individuals who use the registry for frivolous, malicious, or criminal purpose are subject to civil and criminal penalties. For instance, a person who registers a fake security interest just to harass a neighbor would face legal punishment for interfering with their privacy.
So I will discuss Chapter 6 of the Law and Enforcement of Security Interest. First is the right of redemption under Section 45. This allows the debtor or the grantor to recover the collateral by paying the debt, including the enforcement cost, before the collateral is sold or retained by the creditor. Next is Section 46 discusses the right of a higher ranking secured creditor. A creditor with a superior claim may take over the enforcement process before the collateral is disposed of or retained. Under Section 47, the law allows expedited repossession of collateral. A secured creditor may repossess the collateral without court action if the agreement allows it and there is no breach of peace. However, if peaceful repossession is impossible, the creditor must obtain a court order. Section 48 covers recovery in special cases. In certain situations, the creditor may directly collect payments, apply funds from deposit accounts, or enforce rights over negotiable documents without judicial action. Section 49 gives the creditor the right to dispose of collateral through public or private sale after default. Meanwhile, Section 50 requires that the sale be done in a commercially reasonable manner. Section 51 requires the creditor to send a notice of disposition at least 10 days before the sale, except for goods that easily perish or quickly lose value. Section 52 explains the application of proceeds. The money from the sale first used for expenses, then to pay debt and subordinate claims. Any excess goes to the debtor, while any deficiency remains the debtor's obligation. Section 53 protects buyers and third parties who purchase or use the collateral in good faith. Lastly, Section 54 allows the secured creditor to retain the collateral as payment for the debt if the required parties consent or do not object within the given period.
These sections explains important terms used in the chapter. An existing secured creditor is someone who already had a security interest before the new law started. Prior law refers to the old laws that applied before this act became effective. A prior interest means a security interest that already existed before the act and was still active when the act began. The transitional period is the time between the start of the act and the full operations of the registry. In simple terms, this section sets the definitions so everyone understands how all security agreements will be treated during the shift from the old system to the new system. This section says that if a security interest was created before the new act, its validity is still judged under the old law. Even if does not meet the new requirements under the current act, it can still remain valid before the parties involved. The purpose of this section is fairness. It protects the agreements that were legally made before the new law existed, so people are not punished for following the old law. And the section talks about perfection, which means making a security interest legally enforceable against others, usually through registration. If required interest must be perfected under the old law, it stays perfected and temporarily under the new act. However, before the old law perfection expires or the transitional period ends, the parties must comply with the new law requirements. If they do, the security interest will continue without ease from interruption. If they fail to comply, the interest will only become perfected again once they satisfy the new law. This section ensures the continuity and prevents secured creditors from suddenly losing protection during the transition. This section explains how priority disputes are handled. Security determines which creditor gets paid first if there are competing claims over the same collateral. If the security interest existed before the act and the status has not changed, the old law decides priority. But if the interest not being perfected or only became perfected under the new act, then the priority may change. The goal is to preserve fairness and stability among creditors on the old legal system. These sections deals with enforcement actions that already started before the new act became effective. If enforcement had already begun, it may continue under either the old law or the new act. Court cases already in progress before the act would continue to follow the old law. This prevents confusion and delays in ongoing legal proceedings. It ensures that cases already started is simply because a new law came into force.
And now, I'll be introducing to you the last chapter of this article, which is the chapter 8, the Congressional Oversight and Provision. And now we will be discussing the section 60, the Congressional Oversight and Review.
In congressional oversight and review, it means that the Congress must create a group that will be check and review the law every 5 years, that it must be take effects. So it will be made up by members of the Senate and the House of Representatives related to banks and financial institutions. So in the second one, we have interpretations. In this, if the law conflict with another law, this law will be followed unless the other law clearly state that it is changing or it must override this law.
We are at the third one, which is section 62, implementing rules and regulations. In the implementing rules and regulations, it says here that within 6 months after the law is passed, the Department of Finance can make a rules on how to carry out this law. So now we are at section 63, which is the enforcement procedure. Cases under this law will be processed fast and simple. The Supreme Court will make rules to make process quick and aligned with the law's goal. And now we are at section 64, which is funding. Money to run this law comes from land registration authorities. So no further approvals from government is needed. Now we are in section 65, which is the separability clauses. If one part of the law finds unconstitutional, the other part of the law will stay work or will continue its functions regardless if the said part of the law or the other part of the law is unconstitutional. Section 66, which is the repealing clause. Any old laws, rules, or regulations and orders that clashes with this law should be cancelled and replaced by this law.
And now we're second to the last of this chapter, which is section 67, effectivity. Effectivity is it says here that the law will take effect 15 days after it is published. At least 2 newspapers that are widely circulated. Next one is section 68. Section 68, which is implementations. Even if the law is already in effect, it means that it will only be fully implemented once the official registry system is officially working or it is set up and it must be working properly.